Right. Thank you very much, Emily. Nice welcome there. And yeah, they asked me for a stat. I have all kinds of weird stats. That's one of my very weird personal anecdotes there. So avoiding bad stats, and this is very much a passionate presentation for me. It's something I can't avoid seeing. Every time I see a bad stat, it just glares out at me. And a couple of years ago, I decided to do something about it. So this is the result of a lot of research that I've done in the cybersecurity industry. But both things I'll be talking about today, the other half of my talk, is benefits from playing live trivia with friends. They both play into each other. They're both applicable at both work and in your personal life. So I hope you learn some useful stuff out of this. So first of all, how do you know a stat is bad in the first place? How can you spot a bad stat? I think it's you're not always going to be able to spot a bad stat, but if it's in your industry, generally you're going to have some familiarity of what normal looks like, of what typical stats look like, and a bad stat will jump out at you. So you don't really have to go searching for it. It'll hit you, and you'll be like, "Huh, that's funny. That's that. I don't think that's true." and some people stop there, and they just continue reading on. And then other people like me latch onto it and decide not to sleep until they've figured out where that stat came from. If it's wrong, what the correct stat is. Somebody wrong on the internet leads to some sleepless nights for me. But hopefully you benefit from some of the research I've done here. So there are some red flags here. When it fits a narrative too perfectly, if it seems too good to be true, that's one of those ways that you can spot a bad stat. Stats based on impossible data. So just thinking about how the statistic works, you think, well, how would you, and we'll have an example that matches this kind of impossible data scenario. But the moment you start thinking about it, you start thinking, how would I gather the data to produce this stat? And you realize it's if not impossible, incredibly difficult. And maybe that starts you down this rabbit hole. And then, so bad stats, I'm not just talking about stats that are wrong. We're going to talk about different ways that stats can be bad. Like maybe the stat itself can be correct, but the use of it is wrong. It's taken out of context, used in the wrong context, or misunderstood by the person using it. And so and this is something that drives me nuts, when we see journalists use stats and things like that, and they don't include the context. Like I remember years ago after the Home Depot breach, seeing a stat that they settled a suit related to the data breach for $24 million. And immediately I thought, well, obviously $24 million is a lot to me, but is it a lot to Home Depot? I have no idea. So I looked up their revenue, and they do over $100 billion in revenue. So clearly the answer is $24 million is not a lot to Home Depot, very small amount. So it looks impressive when you see the headline, but not so much when you have it within context. So I mentioned a couple types of bad stats. The last one here, number 4, misuse of stats, being a big one of those. Not everybody's a statistician. I don't have any expertise or background in stats. Everything I've learned, I've kind of learned on the fly. I kind of, and that's my whole career really, is just picking up skills, just in time skill acquisition, just as you need it. And I'm sure other folks in cybersecurity can relate to that, especially if you've been in the industry for a while and there was no training for the skills that you had to learn. You had to learn the skills yourself, and maybe eventually you're the one that formalized that skill, and now you teach classes. But certainly there are completely fake stats out there that have no data behind them. And generally these are just people that need a stat that doesn't exist for something, so they'll just make one up. It sounds good, sounds plausible. Let's go ahead and use it. And amazingly, those stats, well, maybe not so amazingly, they spread further and faster than others because, again, like I mentioned before, they fit that narrative so perfectly. People love them. People eat them up. And then there's flawed stats. So maybe there is plenty of data behind a stat, but it's not good data. It's bad data. Surveys are a very common source for these. Surveys asking humans to answer questions is just fraught with all kinds of pitfalls. So trying to put together a good survey takes a lot of experience, and a lot of careful consideration with how you ask questions and which questions you ask. And there's something interesting here. This came from Michael Crichton. Yes, the creator of ER and Jurassic Park, that he called the gel man amnesia effect. And I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the TLDR of this is that this effect comes about, like, say you're reading a newspaper, or I guess he came up with this in 93, so people were still reading newspapers. So today, there's a source that you use for news. And on the items where you're an expert, you read those items, clearly the journalists are either using the wrong stats, their facts are all wrong, it's just a hot mess, and you get upset reading it. But then the amnesia effect comes in. You continue using that news source and trusting it for things that are not in your area of expertise, as if those are somehow going to be more accurate, more trustworthy, less fraught with factual errors than the area where you are an expert. So I love the description of this effect because it helps you tune your skepticism and understand how to use skepticism. So where to find bad stats? I generally, the last time I gave a talk kind of on this topic at Usenix Enigma, I stayed away from any kind of naming and shaming, but Cybersecurity Ventures is just so bold about it. I don't mind to call them out here. In fact, if there are some stats you want to practice on, great place to go. They've got a bunch of stats compiled. Almost all of them are fake, made up, out of context. Every mistake you could make with a stat, they intentionally make, and they make a lot of money off it. So I don't mind calling them out. And a lot of these filter down. You'll find these same stats repeated a lot in vendor white papers, marketing materials, where, again, somebody just needs, it's like finding an image for something. You need something to fit the slide. You Google a little bit, you find it, you use it. And, some of these folks, they're putting this stuff together in a rush. They don't really care so much about the facts. They just care about it looking good. So these get very broad use. And they make it into articles, essays, opinion pieces. So these are things you can intentionally use to spread your bad stats or your fake stats. In fact, you'll see Cybersecurity Ventures do this. They will write things for Forbes and for other places where you can write opinion pieces, or you can pay for bylines and just come in and put your own content in there. And then what you can do is you can use circular referencing, and you can take your bad stat from your own website, use that as a reference for your Forbes article, and then you reference the Forbes article from your own website. That way it looks like you have references for the things, but if anybody tries to track down the raw data or the methodology, doesn't exist. Nothing there. All right, so why care about bad stats in the first place? Credibility is a big one, not only for you individually or for your company, but for the whole industry. We don't want to be the industry always crying wolf. And I think we often, obviously, cybersecurity is something that folks should worry about, but we shouldn't overinflate it as much as we do. And that's really my concern here, is it doesn't do us any favors, to add another zero to something to make it seem bigger or more important. It's important enough already. And that's only going to hurt us when people find out that we added that extra zero or extra couple of zeros, as some of these bad stats are just orders of magnitude out from anything that's reasonable. And when people believe this stuff, we can end up sending people down the wrong paths. wasting time. Security teams, and even at the federal level, we've seen a lot of these bad stats make it up to the federal level, where there are bills that pass in the U.S. government purely because of fake stats. Because the importance of something was overemphasized by that fake stat. And usually, finding the truth here is a great experience. You learn all kinds of stuff along the way. I learned how to understand and weigh stats and prove and disprove, and even do some of my own research, gather my own data, to support the truth. So going down that rabbit hole to learn the truth is worth it for a lot of reasons. So let's jump into a few examples here. There's the infamous 60% of all small businesses go out of business within 6 months of a data breach. And this is one of those impossible to get data, because after 6 months, how do you know that the business didn't go under because they were the 11th cupcake shop in the neighborhood? How do you know that after 6 months it was the data breach that caused that business to go under? It's just not, it's not possible to separate all the different factors that could have impacted that business or could have led to that business failure. Also doesn't match normal. If 60% of all breached small businesses were going under, that would be thousands of, and I did go out and find the numbers here, at least in the US, that would be thousands of small businesses every year. It would just overwhelm the news. It would, there'd be a much stronger response than there actually is. And when we investigate, again, with this one, there's no data behind it. I was able to finally trace it back to somebody who also researched it earlier and traced it back to a single individual. And it was one of these cases where sounded good, so they said it and they keep saying it. So this bad stat emerged in 2011, and the person who made it up is still using it today. And they make money off of using it. And so without evidence, I started to gather information. I was curious, like, how many businesses do go under as a result of a data breach? And I found 23. And that's not 23 last year, that's 23 in all time. Absolutely, there probably could be more than that, maybe 5 or 10 more at the most that I missed. But this is something I've been researching for about 7 years now. And a lot of other people, the community has helped me gather these. And I don't think there are thousands out there that I'm missing here. And yeah, all it took was there was a collaboration between Symantec and Staysafeonlineorg, which is part of the National Security Alliance. They used the stat because they interviewed the person who made it up. Months later, they realized it wasn't a true stat. They pulled it, and every couple of years, maybe even every year, they post an article saying, hey, not a real stat, don't use it. Excuse me for a moment. But it doesn't help. It's already out there. It's spread so many places. This is one of the stats that led to, justify a bill passing in Congress. And it's just, once it's out there, it's really hard to kill. And this is the guy, Joseph Marks, who is over, I don't know if he's still at, what was the name? Nexgov is the name of the outlet that he worked for. And he did some great investigative journalism here and tracked it down to a single individual who's still using it. And yeah, basically what I was saying, it's everywhere. It's and it's still going to continue to be everywhere. Cybersecurity Ventures, it's one of the top ones that they like to use now. It just keeps spreading. All right, another example that you've probably seen, depending on what year the prediction is. I think for 2023, the prediction from Cybersecurity Ventures is $8 trillion in cybersecurity damages. A couple of years ago, it was $6 trillion. And then for 2025, I think the estimate is 10.5 trillion. And almost everybody I've ever talked to says, yeah, that sounds like a ridiculous number. Like not adding 1 zero, but adding like maybe 3 zeros to the actual stat here. So yeah, it doesn't match normal. Fits a narrative. People love to use it. And I decided to jump in and investigate. Again, no methodology stated, no raw data, no attempt to prove that this is anything true, and lots of circular references, which is what they love to do here in the cybersecurity ventures folks. And so the thing with this one, this is not an impossible data situation. There's tons of data on this. There are tons of reports on it. Immediately when you start searching for information on this, you find all kinds of stats in all sorts of different places. So, my first question is, okay, once we start talking about trillions of dollars, the point of reference I want here is global GDP or US GDP, something like that. So those are the numbers I go after first, just to get a point of reference for how big $8 trillion is. And the global GDP for 2020, 85 trillion. And the US was 20% of that at 23.32 trillion, which is a useful number because you can't always find global stats. FBI puts out a lot of great stats that are US only. So it's useful here to know how big the US is in terms of global GDP and the percentage of global GDP. It's going to help us understand this number better. So this kind of walks you through my thinking. As I'm doing some Google searches, trying to pull some of these numbers here, I'm thinking, okay, ransomware is a big deal, right? Like how big is that? Find out that that's $500 million. It's actually down 40% from last year. It never, and that's globally. Globally, ransomware never quite hit $1 billion. And the nice thing there is, thanks to blockchain, that's one of the few places where we can actually see the money moving. We can actually see direct damages. And direct losses versus indirect losses is important to understand also, because direct losses being you paid the ransom directly to them. Indirect losses being maybe you lost business because the news hurt the image of the company. Companies did less business with you. Those would be indirect. And as we walk on down through here, BEC 2.7 billion. It was kind of surprising to me that it's what is that, 4 or 5 times larger than ransomware? So that's interesting. And even global business email compromise and business email compromises, if you're not aware, that's when you send an email, a bad party sends an email to someone, says, hey, I'm your supply chain partner, and we change our banking details, and they get you to transfer millions of dollars to the bad guy's account. And you look at total cybercrime losses for the U.S., 10.3 billion, and we know the U.S. is 27% of global, so we scale that up, and that's about 37 billion. And from looking at different models that different studies have used, generally it's 3 to 3.5%, or 3 to 3.5 times is what you have to multiply by to get indirect losses from direct losses. So if we multiply 37.73 billion by 3.5, we end up with somewhere around, I think it's 115 billion. And that's just barely scratching the surface of this $8 trillion number. So clearly, like we're not even 2% into this $8 trillion number. Already, I'm getting the sense that this has got to be a made-up stat. There's no way that this is even close to the truth. And what are the actual losses? So not 115, 134 is what my calculation came out to be. A study that CISA did said around 242 billion. CSIS and McAfee put together a number of 445 and 600 billion. So it gives you kind of these are not orders of magnitude away from each other. You start to get the sense that, okay, like multiple parties with different methodologies have come to numbers in fairly within the same area. because you can really debate over indirect losses and how big those are. But certainly, like we're not even getting to 1 trillion, much less 8 trillion. And as I mentioned before, the impact is that it's all over the place. Another one here, this is a misuse of stats case. This was a case where somebody took the Verizon data breach stats and misunderstood just a simple graph. They assumed that the top of the x-axis the top of the y-axis on the graph was 100%, and it wasn't. The graph was because the lines didn't reach anywhere near 100%. The graph actually went to, I think, maybe 35% or something like that. And because the malware line was near the top of the graph, they said, it looks like 90%. And it was actually 15%. Whoops. And so kind of a bit of a cautionary tale here. Like I didn't mind calling them out publicly. And to answer the question, bullet point number 3, I think it's okay to call somebody out publicly. If they're using a bad stat publicly, they've already gone public with it. If you're privately reviewing somebody's report or something like that, even if they're doing it publicly, I think probably the best move is to, just kind of quietly, tactfully tell them, hey, that stat's wrong, or, for whatever reason, the stat's bad, or what have you. But in this case, if you're going to use Verizon stats, Verizon actually requires you to check with them first so that they can make sure that things like this don't happen. And in fact, that's how I know what the actual percentage was, is I DM'd somebody on Twitter on the Verizon team, and they came back and told me, no, that's wrong. Here's the raw data. And they sent me the raw data. And that whole process took like 40 minutes while I'm standing here in the expo at Black Hat looking at this stat being misused. So go through proper channels. If you're going to use somebody else's stats, make sure you got it right, especially if you're not an expert with stats. It just takes asking somebody's help. Of course, maybe you don't use a stat because then it's not 90% like you thought it was. And that's when I start to think, you know what, I'm just going to call this out publicly because I feel like this was intentionally misused in this case. So that's me, take caution with that. There will be blowback. It took them years for me to not keep hearing through other channels how upset they were about it. I didn't mind that they were upset about it. I was upset that they abused a stat. So all this is kind of leading to where I want you to get with this is some healthy skepticism. Learn how to look at these stats, learn how to read the data somewhat, especially if you're going to use them in your own reports, in your own talks that you're giving. Let's just make sure we're using real data. If you don't have the skills to assess it yourself, like I said, it took me 45, 50 minutes of just DMing somebody on Twitter to get the help that I was asking for. People in our industry are really eager to help and reach out and help people understand things. So I think there's little excuse to get the wrong stat onto marketing material that you're going to use for 2 years, or in a keynote at a conference or something like that. All right, on to the second part of my talk here, which is somewhat related. Because there's some cognitive biases that come into play here. I talk about, these marketing folks getting, hungry for these stats that kind of drive their product forward, or, really make their marketing materials pop. And that's a type of cognitive bias that, our brain gets excited and we skip the checking that we should do. It's hard to be skeptical when you're excited to see something when it fits perfectly into what you've been building, into the message that you've been crafting. And I think this just occurred to me. I started playing trivia with friends a couple of years ago. Every Tuesday night, I look forward to it. It's something that gets me out from in front of the computer, and gets me out socially, gets me together with friends, and you don't even have to do it with a team. If you the kind of person who's more solitary when you go out to a bar or to a restaurant or something like that, I see plenty of people playing trivia solo. So you can do that as well. And it's I look forward to it every week. It's a lot of fun, and it's very humbling, which is why I'm bringing it up today, is I think it's a great opportunity to kind of hone your awareness of different biases, especially in your own thinking. So yeah, they make money from the amount of people that come out to do trivia. Not that you really need to know that, but I thought it was interesting, like how this whole trivia business works, because all of a sudden I just saw it pop up everywhere. These there's a group called Knox Trivia Guys, which was in the screenshot here, and they do trivia at like 30, 40, 50 different restaurants and bars in the Knoxville area. All days of the week too. Whatever day of the week works best for you, there's some place you can go and you can do trivia. And I was just interested, like what's the business model here? But the rules are pretty basic. Obviously, you have to put away your phones if you're doing trivia. I've seen teams accused of Google fingers, what they call Google fingers. Like, somebody forgot they weren't allowed to have their phone out and had their phone out. Are they cheating? Are they, just replying to a text from their friend? Who knows? But, cheating happens. I don't know if there's much you can do about that. I just don't worry about it. We've never cheated, and I can vouch for that myself. The whole team, about half the team are from the cybersecurity world, and are the type of people that would first die than cheat on trivia. Like, integrity is really, really important. And every now and then somebody pulls out their phone because it's just a response. Something buzzes on their wrist, they pull out their phone, and the other team members shout them down. Put that away. Because you're supposed to get disqualified if you pull out your phone. That rarely happens, but yeah, we don't worry about it. We've come in first, second, and third in the past few months. At the same time, people are telling us that everybody else is cheating. So we still win. So I don't worry about it. And so if you really want to win, and you're thinking about how to put together your team, thinking about all the people there's definitely certain people you want on your team. Don't travel in time and kidnap people to win trivia. But this reminded me of Bill and Ted a little bit, because that's kind of, well, it wasn't trivia. It was, I think, for to pass high school, for a class, for a grade. But you definitely need some subject matter experts in certain areas. The one we lack most often is sports. We generally don't have a sports expert. There's one guy who joins us sometimes, and we win more often when he joins us, because he's the only one who really knows sports. It might be, what team moved from this city, in 1983. As professional teams move from city to city, or it could be, who got an MVP on a certain year. There's always sports questions. Geography, always geography questions, always movie questions. Often there's a question where they give you 3 different movies. What actor was in all 3 of these movies? And like, the actor might be a lead role in one, but they might have, like a tiny cameo in another that you don't even remember. So these can be really tricky if you don't have a movie buff on your team. Definitely history questions as well. There's probably other areas that I've missed here, but these pop up a lot. There's usually a this day in history question. I started using ChatGPT to tell me interesting things that happened on this day in history, and it's actually worked for me. Every single time I've asked ChatGPT for 10 examples of things that happened on this day in history, we've gotten that question right because of ChatGPT. The interesting thing is it's maybe 50% of what it tells you are actual facts, and the rest are just like made up. ChatGPT just makes it up. Like I'm sure it's not making it up on purpose, but it's just misinterpreting the information it has, and it gives you the wrong answer for some of those. So it doesn't matter to me as long as one of the 10 things it tells me is the right answer for the question, we'll get it right. But certainly if you're using ChatGPT for other uses, don't trust anything that it says is a fact. And there's a bonus question. So the strategy around a bonus question is, we might be tied for first place or something like that when the bonus question comes up. And, if it's a bunch of teams that are regulars, there's a better chance that everybody's going to bet all their points. And if everybody gets it right and we don't bet any points, we're going to lose. But if we think everybody's going to get the bonus question wrong, we can bet 0 points and win by just not playing, by not betting any points on the bonus question. So there's definitely some strategy there, and it's always fun. I've met people who have actual formulas that they use to try to, to game the bonus question. I don't think it works. It's just one of those things where you more have to socially look around and you don't know what that bonus question is going to be. They'll tell you the category. They'll tell you like it's geography, but sometimes it's really easy and every single team gets the bonus question right. And sometimes it's really hard and no one gets it right, or just one or two teams get it right. So I love that aspect of the strategy there. And then disagreements will happen. This is really tough. When you have a whole team, there's definitely debate goes on. Like sometimes somebody just absolutely knows the question. There's no debate. We write the answer in a piece of paper and we're ready to go. Like we're done in 10 seconds after the question's been thrown out. And sometimes we need extra time. Like we're trying to remember, where was I in 1987 or something like that. Like, I remember this because I was at college and, people are explaining, how they came up with their answer, because there's a lot of questions where you have to guess the year. They'll throw out a movie, a sports event, and what's the other thing? Like some geopolitical event or something like that, and you have to guess what year all those things happened. And those are really tough. We almost never get those right. Oftentimes we'll get within a year or two of the right answer, but those are super tough. But oftentimes people will use events in their own life, because they remember going to see that movie, and because of who they went to see that movie with, they can kind of pin it down to a year. So a lot of debates go on, but there's 20 questions, 21, including the bonus question. It's not worth getting too heated over. And yeah, you'll have somebody 100% sure that they're right and shout down the other people in the team. And in 10 seconds, if they're right or wrong, so that comes right back at you. You go from 100% right to ouch. And actually I have some slides for that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but yeah, just talking about some of the benefits again, like you can't get too wound around the axle about it, because it really can be a fun time. And maybe that's another thing you take into consideration when putting together your team. Try and imagine your friends that you're thinking about including on your trivia team in certain scenarios. Do you have a certain friend who always has to be right? Maybe don't invite them to be on your team if that's one of their personality quirks, because that's not going to be fun for everybody else. So this is the scenario I just outlined. This is basically how it goes, and this has happened to all of us on the team. We're just 100% sure we know the right answer to something, and we turn it in. Turns out we were way off base, and it's just really, I mentioned at the beginning, this can be really humbling, and this is just one of those cases where it's just absolutely the the most humbling thing ever. And this is where I kind of got into thinking, this is I think there's something I can learn here. And over the past 2 years I've been playing trivia, I really think hard. Like even when I get that emotion that like, oh yeah, I know music or I know geography. I really start to second guess. But it's been 20 years since I looked at a world map. Do I really know what countries border Greece? Maybe not. So I'll downgrade my own guess to like, from like a 90%, which is what my brain and my emotions are telling me, to maybe like a 30%. And that's part of the debate and the discussions you have with your team is you got to be intellectually honest with yourself. Maybe 20 years ago you could have nailed this, but information changes in your brain over the years if it's not fresh. And just as an example of this, this is something I did to my car. Not 20 minutes after bragging about how good I was at driving in the snow. And of course, I get in my car and then I realize I'm in a 4,300 pound rear wheel drive BMW with bald tires. And this happened. Just lose traction, slide into a median, get a rock stuck under the tire there. So it was kind of instant karma for me overestimating my own abilities and my own skills. So how can we work on this? So there's a couple of resources here. There's a lot more than what I'm showing you here, but these two I'm a big fan of. There are these critical thinking cards, which I actually have with me right here. And you can get them as a poster as well. I also have the poster. And there are 24 biases cards and 24 logical fallacies cards. And really interesting and useful to understand these. But I will say, like, there's a temptation as you learn some of this stuff to call out other people's biases and fallacies. And I tell you to, keep most of that to yourself. Like it's very easy to use these as weapons against other people. And it's generally not going to be well received. Most people don't like being called out like that. And some of these biases can apply to you using the bias cards too. You can definitely, after reading about some of these, start seeing some of these biases where they actually don't exist. And I think there's a bias for that as well. I think it's called like the bias or something like that. That's actually in the deck. So you have to be aware of that as well. And then You Are Not So Smart is a podcast. It's a blog that's been going on for like 15 years. The guy eventually took a lot of his blog material, turned it into a book. So you can just go to the website, read it for free, or you can grab the book. But the book, each chapter of the book is a different kind of cognitive bias pitfall. And he's got great examples. It's hilarious, totally worth jumping into. And I think at this point, maybe we've got a couple minutes left. Or am I out of time? I could take some questions, or I just have a few biases here, but I'm basically at the end here.
You have a couple of minutes and a couple of questions.
Let's take some questions.
Our first question hopped in on the chat. What can we do to counter these fake conclusions like the 60% stat? And, is there anything we can do to help cut them down? Why do they stick around?
Yeah, so they stick around. I think that's confirmation bias. They just fit in really well. And I mean, take a salesperson. One of the first slides that they show a customer, there's a problem statement part of a deck when you're trying to sell somebody on something, at least with enterprise cybersecurity. And say they've been using that fake stat for 5 years, that's always been in their deck. Like it's disorienting to be told that you can't use that anymore. And that's a fake stat, like all of a sudden there's 5,000 people you have to apologize to. Like that's a lot to take in. So I think the way to do it, if your company is doing that, or if another company is doing that, I think it's really helpful to have a replacement stat ready for them, so that you're not just pulling the rug out from under them. You're pulling the rug out, but then handing them another rug. I don't know if that metaphor works well, but yeah, I try to, because I know how devastating it's going to feel to them. So I try to have something positive for them as I'm giving them that negative news.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. Do you think a formal education in statistics, like a Stats 101 course, is helpful? Or is this more a matter of media literacy, et cetera, to detect and combat these biases?
Both, I think. So I got a bunch of books on journalism, just textbooks for journalism, that get into some of the skills that journalists learn to understand different stats and things like that, and how in references they need to include. So that's helped me. Absolutely. I think anything that helps you, because you do end up having to do some math when you're trying to find the right stats. Like sometimes you won't find the stat calculated, but you will find the raw data. So it's really helpful for you to have the skills to, it's almost always going to be in a spreadsheet or something like that, to be able to plug some formulas into Excel and get the answer that you need.
Okay. We have a couple more questions in chat that we don't have time for, but I'd like to close it out with one other question, which is your favorite random item of trivia.
Oh, my favorite random item of trivia. Oh man, I know I have a good answer for that, but it's not at the tip of my brain. Random trivia.
Drop it in Slack when you think about it. And let's everyone, thank you so much for Adrian for coming. Got some great chat in Slack, which you should check out. And let's wrap it here.
Oh, I've got one. Honey never goes bad. Honey never spoils.
Honey.
That's a fun one.
Nice.
Yeah, it in theory stays good for thousands of years.